Picture a job site in Germany, a burst pipe, water shut off, the homeowner standing there worried about the bill. The plumber pulls a tool off his belt, not a torch. No flame, no striker, no bottle of gas on the floor. He slides a fitting onto the copper, squeezes a trigger, and you hear a quick hum and a click. 5 seconds. Done. Watertight. He is already packing up while an American plumber would still be waiting on the flux to bubble. Now picture the same repair back home. Somebody down in a crawl space with an open flame, a foot away from bone-dry floor joists, sweating a joint the way we have done it since before I was born. Here is the thing that got me the first time I ever watched it. Across most of Europe, that torch has been sitting in a drawer for 30 years. They almost never solder anymore. And it is not because they got lazy or cheap or forgot how. It is because somebody sat down and did the honest math. And the math says the torch is the slow, risky, expensive way to join a pipe. Stick with me, because every single reason they walked away from that flame is a reason you can save yourself a pile of money at your own house. I am going to walk you through exactly what they use instead, why they switched, and how the same technology is sitting on a shelf at your hardware store right now for about the price of a sandwich. My Uncle Ray taught me to solder when I was a teenager, and 30 years in, I can sweat a joint in my sleep. So understand me, I am not knocking the torch. The trade just moved on, and most folks over here never got the memo. Let me start with what is actually in their hands over there, because the title promises you what they use instead, and I am a man of my word. 4 things replace that torch, and you have quiet access to every one of them. First, press-fit copper. This is real copper pipe, same as you already know, but instead of heating a joint, you use a powered tool that crimps the fitting down onto the pipe in about 5 seconds. A German company pioneered the whole system decades ago. There is a rubber seal inside the fitting. The jaws squeeze the whole thing tight, and that connection is not going anywhere for a very long time. Second, PEX, that flexible plastic tubing you have started seeing in newer houses. Here is what nobody bothers to tell you. PEX was invented in Europe back in the 1960s. It was the standard up through Germany and Scandinavia for decades before America finally came around to it. We act like it is some new thing. It is older than I am. Third, multi-layer composite pipe. Think of a plastic pipe with a thin skin of aluminum baked into the middle of the wall. It bends and stays bent like PEX, but it holds its shape like metal, and it does not sag with hot water the way straight plastic can. And fourth, push-fit connectors. These are the big one for you, and the Brits absolutely love them. You push the fitting onto the pipe with your bare hands, and it grabs and it seals. No tool at all. Over here you have walked right past these at the big box store. That little fitting in the plumbing aisle, the one that costs a few bucks and looks way too simple to actually work. That is the one. So that is the cast. 2 of them you press or push onto plain copper, and 2 of them are the pipe itself. Now let me tell you why a whole continent of plumbers set the torch down. I have got 6 reasons, and number 6 is where this stops being a story about Europe and turns into money in your pocket. 1. No open flame. Start with the obvious one. A torch is fire. When you solder, you are holding an open flame, and usually in the worst possible spot in the whole house. Under a sink, back in a crawl space, up inside a wall cavity 6 inches from old, dry framing you cannot even see. Ask me how I know that one scares me. I have watched a scorch mark bloom on a floor joist that was one dry summer away from being a house fire. The man running that torch did everything right and still nearly cooked the framing, because heat goes where it wants and does not ask permission. Over in Europe, on a commercial job, an open flame means permits and a fire watch, and somebody standing there with an extinguisher for a half hour after you finish, because that is the rule on hot work. All of that is time, and time is money. Kill the flame, and the paperwork just disappears. For you at home, it is even simpler. No flame means you are not gambling your house to fix a pipe. You can press or push a joint 2 inches from wood and nothing ever gets hot. Between you and me, that alone is worth the whole switch. 2. It works on a wet pipe. This one is the quiet killer, and it is the exact reason I keep a handful of push-fit fittings in my own truck at all times. Solder has one demand that never bends. The copper has to be bone dry, not damp, not mostly dry. Bone dry inside and out. If there is a single bead of water sitting in that pipe, the flame boils it to steam. The steam blows right through your molten joint, and the solder will not take. What you get instead is a pinhole that shows up at 2 in the morning 3 days later, right when you thought you were done. Now think about when pipes actually break. They break when they are full of water, in a cold snap, under pressure. You shut the main off and there is still water sitting in that low spot in the line, dripping down, refusing to leave no matter how long you wait. Every old-timer I ever worked with has stuffed a wad of white bread up a pipe to soak the water back long enough to get a dry joint. Ask me how I know that trick. The European systems just do not care. Press fit, push fit, PEX, all of it. You can join a soaking wet pipe, and the seal does not know the difference. Water in the line does not matter one bit. When you are standing in a flooded basement at midnight trying to stop the bleeding, that is not a small convenience. That is the whole ball game. 3. The joint does not depend on your skill. Here is one people never think about, and it is maybe the most important of the bunch. A soldered joint is only ever as good as the person who made it. I can teach you the steps to solder in an afternoon. I cannot teach you to solder well in an afternoon. That part takes years. Too much heat, too little heat, a speck of dirt left on the copper, flux smeared in the wrong spot, and you have got a joint that looks just fine to your eye and quietly fails a year later. The European fittings took the human being out of the equation on purpose. You press a press-fit joint, and the tool either completes its cycle or it does not. There is no in-between. You push a push-fit fitting onto its marked depth, and it is seated or it is not. There is no artistry left to get wrong. A nervous first-timer makes the exact same joint that a 30-year man makes. For you, that is the permission slip. You do not need my hands or my years to do this right. You need the correct fitting and about 30 seconds. That, right there, is the entire reason this channel exists. So let me pause for one quick second. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, do me one small favor and subscribe to the Vintage Pipefitter. It is free, it takes one tap, and every week I walk you through a real repair that saves you a plumber bill. That is the whole deal. You keep the money, I keep showing you how. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. 4. No lead, no flux. All right, back to it. Number 4 is about what is actually in the water you drink. The old solder had lead right in it. We banned lead solder on drinking water lines years ago, and thank goodness. But even the lead-free stuff still needs flux. Flux is an acid paste that cleans the copper, so the solder will grab and flow. It does its job. But any flux left sitting inside that pipe stays in your water line, and it is not something you want to be pouring in a glass and handing to a kid. The European systems have no solder and no flux at all. Nothing acidic, nothing with lead in it, nothing you have to scrub back out afterward. The seal is a rubber ring rated for drinking water, and that is the end of it. Cleaner joint, cleaner water. One less thing to lie awake about. For a house full of kids, I like that a whole lot. 5. It is just plain faster. Number 5 is the one the pros actually care about all day, and it is simple. Speed. A soldered joint is a whole little process. Clean the pipe, clean the fitting, flux them both, dry fit it, heat it nice and even. Feed the solder in, wipe the joint, let it cool, and pray you did not cook the little rubber washer inside the shutoff valve you just installed. That is minutes per joint, and that is if nothing goes sideways. A press or a push-fit joint is seconds. That plumber in the German basement was packed up and gone before an American would have his torch lit. On a big commercial job with 1,000 joints in it, that difference is not minutes, it is days of labor. And days of labor is real money coming off the bill. For you, it means the repair you have been dreading is smaller than you think it is. We are talking about a job you measure in minutes, not a lost Saturday. Which brings me right to number 6, the one you have been waiting for, whether you knew it or not. 6. The do-it-yourself cash-out, number 6. This is where the whole European story pulls right into your driveway. Every single fitting I have described to you is sitting on an American shelf right now, today. The same push-fit connectors the Brits use are in your hardware store for around $8 to $15 each, depending on the size. No tool required. You cut the pipe clean, mark your depth, push it on, and you are finished. A PEX crimp system, the tubing and the tool together, runs you about $30 to $60 for the tool one time, and after that, the fittings are pennies apiece. Now here is the math I promised you at the very top. Say you catch a burst pipe section in a cold snap. A copper line splits behind the drywall and water is coming through the ceiling. You call an emergency plumber, and that visit is going to run you $150 to $350 before he has even touched the pipe, and more than that if it is a weekend or the middle of the night. That is just the going rate. That is not him gouging you either. That is what it costs to roll a truck to your house on short notice. Or you shut the water off yourself. You cut out the bad section with a $10 pipe cutter. You slide a push-fit coupling onto each clean end, drop a short piece of pipe or a length of PEX in between them, and you are watertight for about $20 in parts. No flame anywhere near your floor joists. No permit. No waiting 3 hours on a truck. 15 minutes and it holds. Let me give you the other one, because it is the repair you are even more likely to hit. That little shutoff valve under the toilet or the sink that will not stop weeping. The old way, you drain the line, you desolder the old valve with a torch inches from the cabinet. You clean it all up and you sweat a new one on. The European way, and now your way, you cut the old valve off and you push a new push-fit shutoff straight onto the copper stub with your hands. 2 minutes, $10. No fire under a wooden cabinet full of cleaning bottles. That is the same exact technology a European pro is leaning on all day. The only real difference is that he does it for a living and you did it once to save yourself $300 and a night of worry. Ask me which one of you is smarter that night. One quick word to the wise before you run to the store. Push-fit fittings will grab copper, PEX, and CPVC, but you have got to match the size to your pipe, and you have got to know which of those 3 you are actually holding. Measure it, take a scrap to the counter if you are not sure, and buy the right size. And check your own town's rules. A few places still want these fittings left accessible instead of sealed up inside a wall. Most do not care one bit, but a 2-minute phone call to your local building office beats tearing that drywall back open later. Ask me how I learned that one. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you it is all sunshine, because you have got a decent nose for a sales pitch, and this is not one. There are real trade-offs, and a straight shooter lays out both sides of the ledger. First one is cost per joint. That push-fit fitting that runs you $8 to $15. A plain old copper sweat fitting is $1, maybe $2. So joint for joint, the easy stuff is several times more expensive. For one emergency repair, who on earth cares? You just saved yourself hundreds. But say you are repiping a whole house, and now you are staring at 100 joints or more. At $10, a fitting that is $1,000 in couplings and elbows alone, where solder would have been pocket change. That price gap is exactly why plenty of pros still solder or press the big jobs. Cheapest per joint still wins when the joint count gets high. Second one is the long game on that little rubber seal. A push-fit fitting is trusting a small O-ring to keep doing its job for decades on end. Solder is metal fused straight to metal, and honestly, a good sweat joint can outlive the person who made it. So the fair question is, will that rubber ring still be sealing tight 30 years from now? Nobody has 100 years of proof yet, because the stuff simply is not 100 years old. What I can tell you is that the major brands warranty these fittings for 25 years, in the wall, buried, wherever you put them. A company does not staple its name to a 25-year warranty on a part it expects to fail. I trust them behind drywall, and I use them in my own house. But I am handing you the honest, open question so you can weigh it for yourself. That is the whole trade-off sheet. Simpler, safer, and faster on the one side, against a higher price per joint, and a rubber seal instead of solid metal on the other, for the repairs most of you are ever going to do. That trade is not even close. Now listen close, because this is the one place I put my foot down, and I do not soften it 1 inch. Gas lines, never. None of this. Not push fit, not a homeowner special, not a quick fix, not one time, not ever. Everything I just showed you is for water, and water only. A water leak makes a mess and costs you a little money. Gas leaks, and it can take your whole house and everybody sleeping in it. Gas line work is for a licensed pro with the right pipe, the right joint compound, and a real pressure test every single time. If your problem is anywhere on the gas side, you close this video, you pick up the phone, and you call somebody licensed and insured. I will not tell you how to do that one, because the honest, experienced answer is that you should not touch it. That is the line between saving a buck and making a widow. We do water on this channel. Gas stays off the table. All right, you made it to the end, so here is the bonus tip I hold back for the folks who actually stick around. When you use a push-fit fitting, the whole secret nobody tells you is in the prep, and it costs you about 10 extra seconds. 2 things. Number 1, cut that pipe square and knock every burr off the end with a deburring tool, or even just a folded bit of sandpaper. That little sharp ridge a pipe cutter leaves behind is the number 1 thing that nicks the O-ring on the way in and gives you a slow weep 3 months down the road. Deburr it. Number 2, and this is the real trick, take a marker and check the insertion depth off the package, then mark that depth right onto your pipe before you push. There is a little depth chart printed on every one of them. When you push the fitting on and your mark disappears into it, you know for a stone-cold fact it is seated all the way home. I will tell you, almost every push-fit failure I have ever been called out to fix was not a bad fitting. It was a pipe that never got pushed all the way in, or a nasty burr that chewed the seal on the way. Deburr, mark your depth, push to the line. Do those 2 little things and that $20 repair will outlast the drywall standing in front of it. Ask me how I know. So there it is. A whole continent of plumbers figured out the torch was the hard way, and now you know the easy way, sitting right on the shelf next to it. Go save yourself the plumber bill. That is a wrap. If this saved you a service call, or it saves one down the road, that is why I do this. New real-world repair every week on the Vintage Pipefitter, the kind of fix that took me 30 years to learn, handed to you for free. Subscribing keeps them coming, so the answer is waiting when the next pipe goes. Thanks for spending time in the shop.